So this is another old one. This is from 2022. But so I got, oh, excuse me. So I got a deck of tarot cards, and from time to time I like to use them. And I know that things like tarot and astrology are kind of looked at in this certain light, and it's seen as this, um, you know, unproven, thing. I'm going to read what I wrote here. Astrology and tarot cards. I use tarot from time to time, and I feel that people either agree with their use or found them ridiculous because they are not scientific and therefore utterly absurd. I agree to an end. A person who lives by their readings and does not make a decision without them is hiding from themselves and the world. However, it can provide an easy way to self reflect and think about where you are and where you want to be. It allows you to be a little more critical with yourself because we like to lie to ourselves, or at least that's what I've experienced. While it can't predict the future, it still has tremendous value without needing to be scientific and uniform. I don't think it's right to laugh at someone who believes in it for comfort. Is that not what believing science at the end of the day? Is that not what believing in science is at the end of the day? A way to comfort ourselves in this world of the unknown? So, what I just said there, I know that some people will disagree with the whole, science is the same thing. But realistically, the concept of understanding and knowing the world, while we may see it as true, um, we don't know what we don't know. And so it's really a more of a, to say, oh, we have science, we know what's going on, is really just a comfort thing. It's not, we don't know why we're here. We don't know what we're doing, right? Just because we understand a fraction of the universe and how it functions doesn't mean we really understand anything. So, it's really more of a cope than anything to say, well, we understand, and the reality is there's a lot we still don't know. And so there's that. But what I'm saying here is that when it comes to like predicting the future and stuff like that, I don't think that that's necessarily valuable. Not saying that you can't do it or shouldn't do it, but to me, that's not how I use them, and that's not what I really necessarily like to do with them. Typically, what I do is I have like my deck of tarot cards, and what I do is I shuffle it up, and then I take out a card, and well, at first I ask a question. I'll be like, should I don't know, cook up some pasta? I don't know, we'll just say that, right? And then I flip over the card, boom, what does it say, right? So then I have a little booklet that goes along with it that has some descriptions of what each card means. And so I read the description, and so these descriptions are relatively vague and broad, right? And they're done like that intentionally to make them apply to your life. But here's the thing. Yes, without context, it's a very broad thing that can apply to a lot of stuff. But with context, it becomes a lot more specific. And the thing is where does that context come from? It comes from you. And so when you are doing these tarot cards, you place them out, and we have a pattern recognizing behavior. And so what our mind does is we recognize these patterns. But here's the thing, that pattern only exists for you in your mind. You are the one who's creating that pattern. That pattern is not there. You are creating that pattern. And you're creating that pattern because you're saying, oh, well, that actually ties on into this thing, right? So I flip over the card, and it says, something, 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 like maybe something like vague, like you may have been working really hard and, but now it's time for some rest, right? And so basically, I look at that and I go, oh, okay, I shouldn't make pasta right now, right? Because it says take some time to rest. So like, there's a bunch to the description, but only a certain part of it really, leaps out at me, because a part of me was like, I don't feel like making pasta, right? And so I asked the tarot card, should I make pasta? And it says, no, don't make the pasta. And I say, okay, the universe told me don't make the pasta, right? And so realistically, it's just a better way of kind of communicating with myself, because a part of me is like, I don't want to make the pasta, right? But then the other part of me is like, oh, but we might be hungry later, right? And so I say, all right, well, what do we do? And so flip it over and it says, like the way I read it as telling me, don't make the pasta. And because that's how I read it, that's more true to what I'm thinking. Because if I wanted it to say, make the pasta, if I really wanted to make the pasta, then it would have told me, make the pasta, right? And so this is how I think it is useful to use it. It's useful to kind of recognize how you are interpreting certain things and what that means. Because if you look at something and because there's some things that like you're asking it, like if you're asking it, you kind of have an idea of what the answers are. You just need something to confirm your decision or your idea, right? So you're like, do I make the pasta? And it says, no, Sam, you don't got to make the pasta. And I go, okay, perfect, because I didn't want to, right? Right? Or it might say like, or maybe it's like, should I do another hour of studying for like an exam? And I know that I should probably study another hour for the exam, but I don't really feel like it, right? So I flip it over and it says, yeah, you should study, basically. And I go, okay, I guess I got to study, right? And so it's how you interpret it. And it's important to kind of, it's really not even, what it helps with is one, it helps you kind of communicate with yourself, but it also helps you understand how you think and what patterns are being formed and what is going on in your head. Because maybe you look at something and it triggers like a thought, like, oh, that makes me think of, my breakup I just went through or something like that, right? And it's like you weren't necessarily thinking about that, but the card that came down felt like that's what it was referring to, right? And so that is the kind of patterns that are being formed there. That pattern doesn't exist. You created that pattern because a part of you was thinking about that, right? And is still thinking about that. And so when you see these things pop up, it's kind of good to recognize that. And so that's why what this talk is about is basically saying that I think that they are useful, and that while they aren't scientific, it doesn't mean that they're not beneficial. And I think that they're, I don't know, everything has its place in a way, and I wouldn't use it to predict the future necessarily, but using them in this kind of way to do some critical thinking with the self and kind of some self-reflection. I think it helps enhance the self-reflection a bit, because it allows you to be more honest with yourself without having to actively try and be honest with yourself, right? It just kind of emerges on its own. And so I think that is, helpful. And you could really do this with, other things. It's not just tarot cards or whatever, but that's just the example that I have. And so that's, my experience. And so I figured I would say something about that. So, yeah. Peace out.